The black ships came from the darkness between stars like giant metal sharks swimming through an ocean of nothing. Each vessel stretched longer than the tallest buildings on Earth, their hulls smooth and deadly. They moved in perfect formation, dozens of them creating shadows against the distant sun. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Celestial Dominion. His forearms were folded behind his back as he watched the small blue planet grow larger on the viewing screen. Earth looked so peaceful from space, so helpless. He had done this same thing 47 times before with other worlds. It always ended the same way. "Sir, we are receiving signals from the planet," his communications officer reported. "They want to talk." Kethvar's mandibles clicked together in what his species considered laughter. "Of course they do. They have seen our ships. They know they cannot fight us." The human planet had been sending out radio signals for over a century. His scouts had been listening to their communications, learning their languages, studying their primitive technology. Humans still used chemical rockets to barely escape their own atmosphere. They fought wars with metal bullets and explosive devices. They were children playing with sticks while the Zephyrian Empire wielded the power of stars. "Tell them we will receive one of their diplomatic vessels," Kethvar ordered. "Make sure they understand the honor we are giving them." Within hours, a small human ship approached the Zephyrian fleet. Kethvar watched it come closer and felt disappointed. The vessel was tiny, maybe 200 meters long. Its hull was painted white with blue markings. It looked more like a cargo transport than a proper ship. Where were the weapons? Where were the shields? How did these creatures expect to survive in space with such pathetic technology? The human ship docked with the Celestial Dominion. Kethvar made his way to the main airlock, followed by his honor guard. 6 Zephyrian warriors in full battle armor, each carrying plasma rifles that could melt through steel. The humans would see this display of power and understand their situation immediately. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. 3 humans stepped through, wearing simple blue uniforms with no visible weapons. The leader was a woman with short brown hair and calm eyes. She looked around the docking bay with what appeared to be genuine amazement. "Welcome aboard the Celestial Dominion," Kethvar said in careful English. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire." The human woman stepped forward and offered her hand in their strange greeting ritual. "Captain Saracen of the Earthship, Olive Branch. Thank you for meeting with us, Admiral." Kethvar studied her face as they shook hands. She seemed nervous but not terrified. That was interesting. Most species were barely able to speak when they first saw Zephyrian warriors. "Come," he said. "Let me show you the power of the Empire." He led the human delegation through the corridors of his ship. Captain Chen and her companions looked at everything with wide eyes. They stopped to examine the energy conduits that glowed in the walls. They stared at the holographic displays that showed star maps of conquered worlds. When they passed through the weapons control center, Chen actually gasped. "These energy readings," she said softly. "Are these your main guns?" "Our smallest weapons," Kethvar replied with pride. "Each of these cannons could destroy your largest cities in seconds." Chen nodded slowly. "Incredible. We have nothing like this. Perfect." She was already understanding the reality of her situation. In the main conference room, Kethvar activated the holographic display. Images of Zephyrian worlds appeared in the air above the table. Cities that floated in the sky, space stations that orbited dying stars, fleets of warships that numbered in the thousands. "The Zephyrian Empire spans 412 worlds," he began. "We have brought peace and order to countless species across this galaxy. We offer the same gift to humanity." Captain Chen leaned forward in her chair. "What kind of gift?" "Protection," Kethvar explained. "Your world will become part of our empire. You will have our technology, our knowledge, our security. In return, you will provide resources and workers to help our civilization grow." "And if we refuse?" Kethvar's mandibles clicked again. "Look around you, Captain. Do you see an option for refusal?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. She looked at her 2 companions, then back at the holographic display. "I need to discuss this with my government. This is a decision that affects all of humanity. Of course, you have 72 of your hours to decide. But Captain Chen, let me be clear about something." Kethvar stood up, his forearms spread wide. "In 5 centuries of expansion, no species has ever chosen to fight us after seeing our fleet. The wise choice is obvious. Captain Chen and her team were given quarters on the ship while they waited. Kethavar watched through security cameras as they explored their rooms and talked quietly among themselves. They seemed to be taking measurements of things and asking questions about how various systems worked. Curious behavior, but harmless. Primitive species often wanted to understand technology that was beyond their comprehension. The next day, Chen requested a tour of the fleet. Kethavar was happy to show off his ships. They visited the Void Piercer, a destroyer that could move faster than light. They toured the Starbreaker, a dreadnought whose main cannon could crack planets. Chen and her people asked many technical questions. How did the engines work? How much energy did the weapons consume? How were the ships built? Your technology is amazing, Chen said as they stood on the observation deck of the Starbreaker. How long did it take your people to develop ships like this? Many thousands of years, Kethavar replied. But we are generous with our knowledge. Species that join our empire willingly receive access to our science much faster. Chen nodded and made notes on a small device. I think I understand. On the final day, Captain Chen returned to the Celestial Dominion for Earth's answer. She looked tired but determined as she entered the conference room. Kethavar had assembled his senior officers for this moment. They all expected the same outcome as always. Admiral, Chen began, I have spoken with the leaders of Earth. We are honored by your offer to join your empire. Kethavar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Another world added to their collection without firing a shot. However, Chen continued, we must respectfully decline. The conference room went silent. Kethavar felt his 4 hearts skip beats. In 500 years of conquest, no species had ever said those words after seeing the fleet. I am sorry, Captain, he said slowly. I do not think I understood you correctly. Earth chooses to remain independent, Chen said clearly. We thank you for your generous offer, but we prefer to govern ourselves. Kethavar looked around at his officers. They were all staring at the human woman as if she had spoken in an alien language, which in a way she had. The language of species that chose destruction over submission. Captain Chen, Kethavar said carefully, perhaps you need more time to consider this decision. Perhaps you need to see a demonstration of what refusing our protection means. Chen stood up from her chair. That won't be necessary, Admiral. We understand the situation perfectly. She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. But Admiral, if you insist on a demonstration, we'd be happy to show you one of our own. The words sent a chill through Kethavar's spine. What could these primitives possibly demonstrate that would matter against the might of the Zephyrian Empire? But something in Captain Chen's calm smile made him hesitate. Something in her eyes suggested that Earth might not be as helpless as it appeared. Admiral Kethavar could not sleep that night. Captain Chen's words kept echoing in his mind. No species had ever offered to demonstrate anything to the Zephyrian Empire. Most begged for mercy. Others tried to hide. A few attempted desperate attacks that ended quickly, but none had ever smiled and offered demonstrations. He stood in his private chamber looking out at the stars. The human ship Olive Branch floated near his fleet, small and fragile among the massive Zephyrian warships. It looked like a child's toy next to real weapons of war. Yet something about Captain Chen's confidence bothered him. Sir, came a voice from his door communicator. The human vessel is requesting permission to return to their planet. Granted, Kethavar replied. Track their movement. I want to know exactly where they go. The Olive Branch departed the next morning. Kethavar watched it disappear toward the inner solar system, becoming just another point of light among millions. His scout ships followed at a distance, recording everything. Hours passed. Then a day. The human governments remained silent. No messages of surrender. No pleas for more time. Nothing. Kethavar called a meeting of his senior officers in the main war room. The holographic display showed Earth's solar system in detail. Their scouts had mapped everything over the past few months. 1 star, 8 planets, countless asteroids and small moons, and 1 inhabited world full of primitive creatures who had somehow forgotten their place in the universe. Fleet Admiral, said Commander Vextar, the humans have had sufficient time to reconsider. Perhaps they need encouragement. Kethavar nodded slowly. I agree. Prepare the fleet for a demonstration, something they cannot ignore. Within an hour, the Zephyrian battle formation was complete. 43 ships arranged in perfect attack pattern. Destroyers on the flanks, their hulls gleaming with deadly energy. Cruisers in the middle ranks, weapons charged and ready. And at the center, the massive dreadnoughts that could end civilizations. All ships report ready. Sir, his tactical officer announced. Begin the demonstration, Kethvar ordered. The first part of the display was movement. The fleet performed a complex dance through space, ships moving in perfect coordination. They accelerated to speeds that would crush any human vessel. They turned in formations that demonstrated complete control over physics that humans barely understood. Each maneuver was calculated to show the hopelessness of resistance. Target the asteroid cluster at coordinates 779, Kethvar commanded. The fleet's weapon systems came online with a sound like thunder trapped in metal. Energy readings spiked across all sensors. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. Even Kethvar, who had seen this display dozens of times, felt impressed by the raw destruction his fleet could unleash. Fire. Lance beams of pure energy reached across space in perfect straight lines. They struck the asteroid cluster and turned rock into expanding clouds of superheated gas. In seconds, chunks of stone that had existed for billions of years simply ceased to exist. The energy released was equivalent to 1,000 nuclear weapons detonating simultaneously, but they were not finished. Target the ice moon at coordinates 442. This target was larger, a small moon covered in frozen water, about the size of a human city. The dreadnought Starbreaker moved forward, its main cannon charging with enough energy to power a planet. The beam that emerged was not like the smaller weapons. This was a column of destruction that tore through space itself. When it struck the ice moon, the entire celestial body simply vanished, not destroyed, not broken apart, completely removed from existence as if it had never been there at all. Readings confirmed total destruction, reported the weapons officer. No debris larger than dust particles. Kethvar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Open a channel to Earth. The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of a human space station. Several humans in military uniforms looked back at him. Their faces were pale but determined. People of Earth, Kethvar began. You have witnessed a small demonstration of our capabilities. The asteroids and moon we destroyed could have been your cities, your military installations, your entire world. We offer you one final opportunity to accept our protection. A human admiral stepped forward. Admiral Kethvar, I am Admiral Rodriguez of Earth Defense Command. We received your message clearly. And your response? Earth's position remains unchanged. We choose independence. Kethvar felt his mandibles grinding together in frustration. Were these creatures insane? Had they not seen the moon disappear? Admiral Rodriguez, perhaps you did not understand what you witnessed. We destroyed celestial bodies. Your weapons cannot even scratch our shields. We understand perfectly, Rodriguez replied calmly, and we appreciate the demonstration. As Captain Chen mentioned, we'd be happy to provide one of our own. You keep saying that, Kethvar snapped. What could you possibly show us that would be relevant to this discussion? Admiral Rodriguez smiled the same way Captain Chen had, that calm, confident expression that made no sense. Why don't you watch and find out? The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers exchanged confused glances. What demonstration could these primitives possibly offer? Sir, called his sensor operator. I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the inner system. What kind of readings? Unknown, sir. The patterns don't match anything in our databases. Kethvar frowned. Show me. The main display switched to a detailed scan of Earth's solar system. At first, everything looked normal. The sun burned at the center. Planets orbited in their predictable paths. Asteroids drifted in their belt between the fourth and fifth worlds. Then things began to change. Sir, I'm reading massive energy spikes from multiple locations, the sensor operator reported. The readings they're enormous, sir. How enormous? Larger than our dreadnought reactors. Much larger. That was impossible. Human technology was centuries behind Zephyrian science. They still use primitive chemical reactions for power. Their most advanced weapons were barely stronger than rocks thrown by hand. Are you certain about these readings? Yes, sir. And they're growing stronger. Kethvar stared at the display. Numbers scrolled past showing energy outputs that shouldn't exist in this system. Power levels that suggested technology far beyond what humans should possess. Sir, another officer called out. I'm detecting movement in the asteroid belt. Large-scale movement. Show me. The display zoomed in on the asteroid belt. Kethvar watched in growing confusion as chunks of rock began moving with purpose. Not drifting, moving, accelerating in directions that defied orbital mechanics. Are those asteroids under power? They appear to be, sir. I'm reading engine signatures from over 200 objects, 200 asteroids with engines. That was strange but not threatening. Even if humans had somehow built ships disguised as rocks, they would still be primitive vessels. Then the disguises began falling away. What Kethvar had taken for asteroids revealed themselves as something else entirely. Metal structures unfolded from rocky shells. Weapon ports opened like mechanical flowers. Energy signatures blazed to life across the asteroid belt. "Sir," his tactical officer said in a voice barely above a whisper, "those aren't asteroids. They're space stations. Military installations. They've been hidden." Kethvar felt his four hearts beginning to beat faster. Hidden installations were concerning, but still manageable. His fleet had faced defensive stations before. Then Earth's moon began to change. The gray surface cracked along geometric lines. Sections of rock slid away to reveal gleaming metal underneath. Massive weapon batteries emerged from hidden bays. Energy readings from the moon suddenly spiked to levels that made Kethvar's instruments scream warnings. "Status report," he demanded. "Sir, we're reading energy signatures from Luna that exceed our main fleet reactor output by a factor of 12. 12 times the power of his entire fleet, from one moon. That was not possible with human technology. But they were not finished. Mars, the red planet, was changing too. Its dusty surface was shifting, revealing structures underneath. A planetary shipyard became visible, with vessels under construction that dwarfed Zephyrian dreadnoughts. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." "Put it through." Captain Chen appeared on the screen. But she was no longer wearing a simple diplomatic uniform. Now she wore the dark blue of a military commander with insignia that marked her as a fleet admiral. "Admiral Kethvar," she said pleasantly, "thank you for your demonstration. As promised, here is ours." Behind her, Kethvar could see the bridge of what was obviously a warship. Not the civilian transport she had arrived in. A military vessel with technology that looked disturbingly advanced. "Observe," Chen said simply. The space around Earth suddenly filled with light. The lights that filled space around Earth were not explosions or energy weapons. They were activation signals. Across the entire solar system, things that had been hidden were revealing themselves. Admiral Kethvar watched in growing shock as his tactical display updated with new contacts. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. What his scouts had mapped as empty space, asteroids, and dead moons were coming alive with energy signatures that made his fleet look like toys. "Sir," his sensor operator called out, voice shaking, "I'm reading massive structural changes throughout the system. The planet Jupiter's moons they're moving into formation." On the main screen, Kethvar watched 4 points of light arrange themselves around the gas giant. But these were not natural moons anymore. They were revealing geometric shapes, metallic surfaces, weapon arrays that stretched across hundreds of kilometers. "Energy readings from the Jupiter system now exceed our entire fleet capacity by a factor of 50, his tactical officer reported. 50 times. Kethvar felt his breathing become difficult. How was this possible? Human technology was primitive. Their most powerful weapons were barely stronger than chemical explosives. "Sir, detecting massive movement from Earth itself." Kethvar turned his attention back to the blue planet. At first it looked unchanged. The same white clouds, the same brown and green continents, the same blue oceans he had observed for months. Then the continents began to separate. "What am I looking at?" Kethvar demanded. "Sir, the planet's surface appears to be opening, like massive doors or hatches. I'm reading artificial structures beneath the continental plates." Kethvar watched in disbelief as Earth's Pacific Ocean drained away, revealing a metal surface underneath. The ocean had been covering something enormous. As water flowed away into hidden channels, weapon ports became visible. Each one was larger than his entire flagship. "Sir," his science officer called out, "preliminary analysis suggests the entire planet has been modified. Extensively modified. The continents appear to be movable sections covering a planetary-scale installation." A planetary-scale installation. Kethvar had heard rumors of such things. Ancient weapons left behind by dead civilizations. Planet killers built by species that had transcended physical existence. But he had never seen one. No one in the Empire had. "How long would it take to build something like that?" he asked quietly. "Sir," With our most advanced technology, converting an entire planet would take thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands. But humans had only been spacefaring for decades. Their radio signals indicated they had barely developed electricity 2 centuries ago. How could they have built something that would challenge the Empire's greatest engineering projects? The answer came from Captain Chen's voice across the communication channel. "You're wondering how this is possible," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "Humanity has been preparing for this conversation for over 200 years. We've been watching, learning, and building." "Impossible," Kethvar said. "Your species has barely left your planet," Chen smiled. "Admiral, you've been listening to our radio signals for months. Did you think we weren't listening to yours?" The words hit Kethvar like a physical blow. The Empire's communication networks. Their scout ships had been transmitting data back to command for months, using standard encryption protocols. Protocols that were absolutely secure against any known technology. "We've known about your Empire since your first scout probe entered our system 18 months ago," Chen continued. "We've been monitoring your communications, studying your technology, learning your tactics. Every species you've conquered made the same mistake. They tried to match you ship for ship, weapon for weapon. On the tactical display, more structures were coming online. The asteroid belt had completely reorganized itself into a defensive grid. Each installation was broadcasting energy signatures that equaled or exceeded Zephyrian capital ships. We took a different approach," Chen said. "We asked ourselves, what if the entire solar system was the weapon?" Kethvar looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their instruments in disbelief. The readings they were seeing violated everything they knew about human capabilities. "Status of our weapon systems," he ordered. "All systems functional, sir. But, sir, target acquisition is having difficulty. There are too many contacts. Our computers can't process them all. Too many contacts." His fleet was designed to fight other fleets. Organized formations of ships that moved predictably through space. They were not prepared for an enemy that had turned an entire star system into a fortress. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "the humans are hailing us again." "Put them through." This time it was not Captain Chen. A new human appeared on the screen, an older man with gray hair and calm eyes that reminded Kethvar uncomfortably of seasoned Zephyrian commanders. "Admiral Kethvar, I am General Harrison, Strategic Defense Command. I think we need to have a more honest conversation." "You have hidden your true capabilities," Kethvar said. "This is deception." "Yes, it is," Harrison agreed calmly. "Just as you deceived us by pretending this was a diplomatic mission instead of a conquest fleet." Kethvar had no answer for that. Empire protocol was clear. Overwhelming force followed by generous surrender terms. It had worked for 5 centuries. "General Harrison, you cannot seriously believe you can fight the entire Zephyrian Empire. This is one system. We control hundreds of worlds. Admiral, you control hundreds of worlds because you've never faced serious resistance. Your conquests have been easy because your enemies were unprepared. We've had nearly 2 years to prepare." On the tactical display, new contacts were still appearing. Ships emerging from hidden bays and asteroids, stations powering up in the outer system, weapon platforms that had been disguised as space debris revealing their true nature. "How many installations do you have?" Kethvar asked. "Enough," Harrison replied simply. "Sir," Kethvar's science officer called out, "I've completed preliminary analysis of their modifications. Admiral, they haven't just built weapons, they've rebuilt the fundamental structure of their solar system. Gravity generators, artificial magnetic fields. They've turned their star system into a controlled environment. That explained how they had moved asteroids into formation, how they had hidden massive installations. They had been reshaping space itself. Your demonstration was impressive," Harrison continued. "Destroying asteroids and moons shows considerable firepower. But Admiral, we didn't just modify our system for defense. We built it for projection of force." "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, Harrison gestured to someone off screen. "Show him." The space around Kethvar's fleet suddenly changed. Not visibly, but every sensor on every ship began screaming warnings. Massive gravitational fluctuations. Energy patterns that shouldn't exist. The fabric of space itself was being manipulated. "Sir, we're detecting gravitational anomalies around the fleet," his science officer reported. "Something is generating artificial gravity fields. Can we move?" "Sir, our engines are functional, but the gravitational interference is making navigation difficult. We can move, but not quickly and not precisely. Kethavar realized what the humans had done. They had not just built weapons. They had built a trap. His fleet was caught in artificial gravity fields that limited their movement, while surrounded by defensive installations that could fire freely. "This is not possible," he said quietly. "Your technology cannot do this." General Harrison's expression was sympathetic but firm. "Admiral, you're thinking like a conqueror. You see a primitive species and assume they'll remain primitive. But we're not the same humans who were sending radio signals a century ago. We learn, we adapt, we improve. But this level of advancement, it would take thousands of years. It would take your species thousands of years," Harrison corrected. "Humans work differently. When we're faced with an existential threat, we don't just prepare for it. We obsess over it. We dedicate our entire civilization to solving it." Kethavar thought about the intelligence reports on human history. They had fought wars against themselves for millennia. They had survived ice ages, plagues, nuclear weapons, climate disasters. Each time they had not just survived, they had come back stronger. "For 200 years our best minds have worked on one question," Harrison continued. "How do we defend ourselves against a galactic empire? Not how do we build better ships, how do we make ourselves unconquerable?" The tactical display showed the full scope of what humans had built. The entire solar system had been converted into a weapons platform. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid belt had been modified for war. It was not just impressive. It was terrifying. "General Harrison," Kethavar said carefully, "what happens now?" Harrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Now, Admiral, we show you what unconquerable looks like." General Harrison disappeared from the screen, replaced by Admiral Chen. But this was not the diplomatic captain who had visited Kethavar's ship. This was a military commander in full uniform, standing on the bridge of a warship that looked nothing like the simple transport vessel Olive Branch. "Admiral Kethavar," Chen said, "you wanted a demonstration. Let us show you precision first." On Kethavar's tactical display, a single beam of energy reached across space from Earth's moon. It was not like the massive destruction beams his fleet had used to destroy asteroids. This was something else entirely. Thin, focused, and impossibly precise. The beam touched his flagship's main weapon system and stopped. Not penetrating the hull, not causing an explosion, just touching. "Sir," his weapons officer called out in confusion, "our primary plasma cannon is offline. Damage report." "No damage, sir. The weapon system has been removed, surgically removed. The beam somehow extracted our main gun without affecting surrounding systems." Kethavar stared at his tactical display. The beam had reached across hundreds of thousands of kilometers and performed delicate surgery on his ship's weapons, with precision that his own engineers couldn't match at point-blank range. "How is that possible?" he whispered. Admiral Chen heard him somehow. "We've had a long time to study your technology, Admiral. Every sensor scan your ships performed, we were scanning you back. We know your weapon systems better than you do." Another beam reached out from a different installation. This one touched the destroyer Void Piercer and somehow disabled its engines without causing any explosion or visible damage. The ship simply stopped, floating helplessly in space. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the Void Piercer reports total engine failure, but there's no damage. Their power systems just turned off." More beams began reaching out from installations throughout the solar system. Each one precisely targeted a specific system on a specific ship. Weapons went offline. Shields deactivated. Communication arrays stopped functioning. None of the ships were destroyed. None of the crews were harmed. But the Zephyrian fleet was being systematically dismantled piece by piece. "This is not random destruction," Kethavar realized. "You're demonstrating control." "Correct," Chen replied. "Any species can build weapons that destroy. We built weapons that choose exactly what they affect. We can disable your ships without killing your crews. Or we can do this." The demonstration changed. Now the beams reaching out from human installations were different, broader, more powerful. They reached not toward Kethavar's fleet, but toward empty space far beyond the solar system. "Targeting distant asteroid cluster in the Centauri system," Chen announced. Kethavar felt his breathing stop. The Centauri system was over 4 light-years away. No weapon could reach that far. Energy beams traveled at light speed. It would take years for any attack to reach another star system. But on his long-range sensors, readings appeared immediately. The asteroid cluster in Centauri space simply vanished. Not 4 years from now. Now. Instantly. That's impossible, his science officer stated. Energy cannot travel faster than light. Your energy cannot, Chen corrected. We've learned to fold space, to create corridors through dimensions your physics haven't discovered yet. Distance is no longer relevant to our weapons. Cathvar stared at the sensor readings. Weapons that could strike instantly across interstellar distances. The implications were staggering. No fleet could hide from such weapons. No planet could be considered safe. Target asteroid belt in the Vega system, Chen announced. Another distant target vanished instantly. Then another. And another. Each demonstration showed that human weapons could reach anywhere in the galaxy without delay. Stop, Cathvar said quietly. The demonstrations ceased. Admiral, Chen said, you came here expecting to face a primitive species with primitive weapons. Instead, you found a civilization that has spent 2 centuries preparing for this exact moment. Every resource, every brilliant mind, every technological breakthrough has been focused on one goal, making Earth unconquerable. Cathvar looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their instruments in shock. The readings they were seeing redefined what was possible in warfare. Your empire spans 500 years and 400 worlds, Chen continued. Impressive. Humanity has been preparing for galactic contact for 200 years, and we have turned our single system into a fortress that could hold off your entire civilization. One system cannot defeat an empire, Cathvar protested, though his voice lacked conviction. Can't it? Chen asked. Admiral, your empire works because you can project force across great distances. You can move fleets from system to system, overwhelming local defenses. But what happens when your enemy can strike back instantly across any distance? The question hung in space like a physical weight. Cathvar understood the implications immediately. The Zephyrian Empire was built on mobility and overwhelming local force. But if humans could attack any target instantly from their fortress system, mobility became irrelevant. Consider this, Chen said. Right now our weapons are targeting every major military installation in your empire. Your shipyards, your fleet bases, your command centers. We're not firing, but we could, all of them, simultaneously. Cathavar's 4 hearts were beating so fast he could barely think. You're threatening our entire civilization. No, Admiral. We're demonstrating the reality of your situation. You came here planning to conquer us. Instead, you've discovered that we can conquer you. On the tactical display, new information was appearing. Detailed scans of Zephyrian worlds, military installations, fleet positions, defensive arrays. The humans knew everything about the Empire's military structure. How long have you been watching us? Cathvar asked. Since your first scout probe. We've been monitoring your communications, tracking your fleets, mapping your territory. We know where every ship is located. We know the defensive capabilities of every world. We know your supply lines, your command structure, your strategic weaknesses. Chen's image was replaced by a holographic map of Zephyrian space. Every world was marked. Every fleet position was shown. Every major installation was highlighted. It was more detailed than the Empire's own strategic maps. This is what 200 years of preparation looks like, Chen said. Not just building better weapons, building better intelligence, better strategy, better understanding of our potential enemies. The map zoomed in on individual systems showing defensive positions that the Empire considered secret, hidden bases that only a few high-ranking officers knew about. Emergency supply depots that were classified above Cathvar's security level. How? He whispered. Your communication networks are more vulnerable than you think, Chen replied. Your encryption methods assume that only species with similar technology will try to break them. You never considered that a supposedly primitive species might approach the problem from completely different angles. Cathvar realized that the Empire had been completely infiltrated, not by spies or agents, but by mathematical analysis and electronic surveillance that they had never thought to defend against. What do you want? He asked. Right now? We want you to understand your situation. You came here expecting easy conquest. Instead, you found an enemy that knows everything about you and can strike anywhere you exist. Your fleet is trapped in gravitational fields that we control. Your weapons are disabled. Your ships are helpless, but you haven't destroyed us. No, we haven't. That's because we're not conquerors, Admiral. We're defenders. We don't want your empire. We just want to be left alone. Chen's image returned to the screen. Her expression was serious but not hostile. Here's what's going to happen, she said. Your fleet will be escorted out of our system. You will return to your empire and report what you found here. You will tell them that Earth is not available for conquest. And if my empire decides to send a larger fleet, Chen's smile was cold, then we'll demonstrate that our weapons work just as well on 1,000 ships as they do on 40. The size of your fleet is irrelevant when we can disable every vessel instantly from any distance. Kethavar looked at his tactical display one more time. His mighty fleet, pride of the Empire, was floating helplessly in space. Weapons disabled, engines offline, communication systems barely functional. They had been defeated without a single shot being fired in anger. This changes everything, he said quietly. Yes, it does, Chen agreed. The galaxy is about to learn that humans don't follow the same rules as other species. We don't just adapt to threats. We eliminate them. 3 days later, Admiral Kethavar sat in his private quarters aboard the Celestial Dominion. His ship was functional again. The humans had restored his weapons, his engines, his communication systems. They had done it as easily as they had disabled them, with those impossible precision beams that could reach across space and modify technology without causing damage. His fleet was moving away from Earth's solar system, escorted by a single human vessel. Not the massive warships they had revealed, but the same small ship that Captain Chen had arrived in. The Olive Branch. Except now, Kethavar knew it was not a civilian transport. It was a warship disguised as something harmless, just like everything else about human space. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Kethavar accepted the call and Admiral Chen appeared on his screen. She was still wearing her military uniform, but her expression was less severe than during the demonstrations. Admiral Kethavar, she said politely, I wanted to speak with you privately before you reach the edge of our system. To gloat about your victory? Chen shook her head. To help you understand what you'll be reporting to your empire, and to make sure you understand the choice your people now face. Kethavar leaned back in his chair. What choice? You've made it clear that resistance is futile. That's not true, Chen said. You have several options. The question is which one your empire will choose. On the screen behind Chen, a holographic display appeared showing star charts of Zephyrian space. But these charts included new information. Human observation posts, monitoring stations, evidence that Earth's surveillance network extended far beyond their single system. Option 1, Chen began, is to pretend this encounter never happened. Declare Earth system off limits and continue your expansion in other directions. There's a whole galaxy out there, plenty of worlds to conquer that won't fight back. And if we choose that option, then we'll monitor your empire to ensure you keep the agreement. But otherwise we'll leave you alone. We have no interest in interfering with your civilization, as long as you don't interfere with ours. Kethavar studied the star charts. The monitoring stations were positioned throughout Zephyrian space. Humans could watch everything the Empire did, but they were offering to do nothing about it as long as Earth was left alone. Option 2, Chen continued, is to try to develop countermeasures. Spend the next few decades trying to build technology that can match ours. We won't interfere with those efforts either. Why not? Chen smiled. Because we're confident in our technological advantage. You're welcome to try to catch up. By the time you develop weapons that can match what we showed you, we'll have had decades to improve even further. The third chart that appeared showed potential technological development paths, complex equations and research projections that hurt Kethavar's head to look at. But the conclusion was clear. Even with their most optimistic estimates, the Empire would need centuries to match current human capabilities. Option 3, Chen said, is war. The star charts changed again, showing fleet movements and battle projections. But these were not simulations of heroic Zephyrian victories. They showed systematic destruction of Imperial forces across dozens of systems. If your empire chooses war, Chen continued, we'll end it quickly. We won't invade your worlds or harm your civilians. But every military installation, every warship, every weapons platform will be destroyed. Your empire will be left defenseless. You would cripple our entire civilization. Only your military capability. Your people can rebuild. They can develop peaceful technology. They can explore the galaxy without conquering it. But they won't be able to threaten other species. Kethavar looked at the projections and felt sick. The human analysis showed complete military victory within months. Not years. Months. The empire that had dominated the galaxy for 5 centuries would be reduced to helpless colonies scattered across space. There is a fourth option, Chen said quietly. Which is alliance. The word hung between them like an unexpected gift. Kethvar had not expected the humans to offer partnership after demonstrating their overwhelming superiority. What kind of alliance? The kind where your empire stops conquering and starts exploring. Where you use your knowledge of the galaxy to help us make contact with other species peacefully. Where we share technology and work together to advance both our civilizations. Chen's expression became more animated as she described this possibility. Admiral, your people have 5 centuries of experience with different alien cultures. You know languages, customs, technologies that we've never encountered. That knowledge is valuable, and in return, we share our defensive technology, help you protect your existing worlds from other threats, maybe even help you improve life for your citizens instead of just expanding your territory. Kethvar considered this option. It would mean fundamental changes to Zephyrian culture. The empire had been built on conquest and expansion. The idea of peaceful exploration was almost alien to his people. My empire will not accept being dictated to by a single world, he said. We're not dictating, Chen replied. We're offering choices. Your empire can choose any of these paths. But Admiral, understand this clearly. The choice of whether or not to respect Earth's independence is not on the table. That decision has already been made. The communication screen switched to show real-time images of Earth's solar system. But now Kethvar could see the full scope of what humans had built. Thousands of installations, weapons that could reshape space itself, a fortress system that made the Empire's greatest strongholds look primitive. This is what humans accomplished in 2 centuries when we thought our survival was at stake, Chen said. Imagine what we might accomplish in the next 2 centuries if we're working towards something positive, instead of just preparing for war. Kethvar understood the implication. Humans had built all of this while preparing for a threat that hadn't even arrived yet. What would they build when they had actual threats to respond to? What would they become if they focused on exploration and discovery instead of defense? You're offering to become the dominant power in the galaxy, he said. No, Chen corrected. We're offering to help create a galaxy where no one needs to be dominant, where species can coexist without constant fear of conquest, where technology is used for exploration and improvement instead of just warfare. It was an idealistic vision, probably impossible. Species had been fighting each other since the beginning of recorded history. But then most species hadn't figured out how to turn entire star systems into weapons. I'll deliver your message to the Empire, Kethvar said finally. Thank you. And Admiral, when you make your report, please be accurate about what you saw here. Your Empire's decision should be based on facts, not pride or wishful thinking. Kethvar nodded. His report would be the most important document in Zephyrian history. It would determine whether his people chose wisdom or destruction. The communication ended, leaving Kethvar alone with his thoughts. Outside his window, the stars looked the same as always. But he knew that everything had changed. The galaxy now contained a species that could defend itself absolutely and project force across any distance. 2 weeks later, the Zephyrian fleet reached the edge of human space. The olive branch turned back toward Earth, leaving them to continue alone toward the Empire. As they jumped to faster-than-light travel, Kethvar took one last look at Earth's star. It looked so ordinary, just another yellow star among billions, but now it was the center of a new kind of power. Not the power to conquer, but the power to make conquest impossible. Months later, Kethvar stood before the Imperial Council, delivering his report. He told them everything. The hidden installations, the impossible weapons, the technology that could reach across interstellar distances instantly, the choice that humanity was offering. The Council's initial reaction was predictable. Outrage, demands for massive retaliation, calls to mobilize the entire Imperial fleet and crush these upstart humans before they could become a greater threat. But as Kethvar's detailed analysis sank in, the anger changed to concern, then to fear, and finally to the beginning of wisdom. The Zephyrian Empire chose option 1. Earth's system was declared off-limits. Expansion continued in other directions, but with new caution. Other species throughout the galaxy began receiving strange reports about humans who could defend themselves. Absolutely, some civilizations sent diplomatic missions to Earth. Others simply avoided human space entirely. A few tried to develop similar defensive technologies, though none succeeded. And on Earth, Admiral Chen stood in the command center of Luna Base, looking out at the stars. Her aide approached with the latest intelligence reports. Admiral, we're receiving first contact requests from 17 different species. The Zephyrian encounter has apparently attracted attention across the galaxy. Chen nodded. Schedule diplomatic meetings. But keep our defensive systems at full readiness. We've shown the galaxy that we can defend ourselves. Now we need to show them that we can be trusted with that power. Outside the observation window, Earth turned slowly in space.